Abby, are you available? Hello? I don't know. I guess we're live. Hope we're not going into dead air. All right. We've been trying to do some file sending, and there's been a problem, so please bear with us. We'll hopefully get the second hour going just fine. We got half the second hour done, but working on the final segment. Abby, if you're listening to this, I'll just email it to you during the break, and we'll see if we can get it working. If it doesn't work through the email, if you can open up that zip file, I just go ahead and run something else in that second hour. Okay? Sure, you'll figure it out. Oh, my goodness. Folks, it's the first day of February today, in case you forgot or didn't know. Yeah, well, you know, it's always good to remind you what the date is, right? Today in the Utah news, we've got, I guess it's pretty much national. The story really is this Chuck Hagel nomination hearing. I mean, to tell you, this sharp criticism on Senator Hagel is stunning. First of all, let me give you the Utah side of this. You have young, new senator from Utah, Mike Lee, the darling of the Tea Party that came out of nowhere and whacked long-seated Senator Bennett. Totally shocked everybody how he's able to sneak in the caucuses and into the primary and steal the vote. Yeah, actually aced out Bennett. He didn't make it onto the ballot in Utah. Now, here we have Senator Mike Lee flat out just hammering Hagel here in this Washington, D.C. Dateline story. Quote, in an exchange with Utah Senator Mike Lee, President Barack Obama's pick to lead the Defense Department said he regrets saying there's no justification for Israel to, quote, keep Palestinians caged up like animals. Oh, my goodness. Mike Lee, that's just terrible. Terrible that this guy would say it. My golly, it's just absolutely rotten. There's no justification for Israel to keep Palestinians caged up like animals. Senator Lee, what justification is there? Oh, I see. These Palestinians are dirty, rotten, rocket-shooting terrorists. I get it. Okay. Holy mackerel. Quote, former Republican Senator Chuck Hagel made the statement back in the year 2009, and during his lengthy confirmation hearing Thursday, he acknowledged it was a, quote, poorly articulated point. Quote, if I had the opportunity to edit that, like many things I've said, I would like to go back and change the words and meaning. Hagel told Lee, I regret using those choice of words. Yeah, I'm having a problem now with Hagel. Hey, buddy, stand up for what you've said then and believe it. What are you changing your tune now? Is this the wishy-washy, mealy-mouthed man you really are? Stand up for yourself. Tell Senator Mike Lee to go pound sand if he doesn't believe that Palestinians have any rights. Because they do. They're human beings too. Holy my goodness, golly. I can say that because I really don't want to say what's really under my breath. Incomprehensible, probably another good word. The story goes on. Lee, a new member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, is leaning against supporting Hagel's nomination and wasn't impressed with the nominee's performance at the hearing. Quote, Senator Hegel did little to help himself today, said Lee, who spent all of his allotted time pressing Hegel on his views on Israel. Holy cow! As if there's nothing else to discuss, Mr. Lee? I don't want to call you Senator. You Zionist Mormon? Whoa. That's all you care about is how he feels about Israel. It's sickening. Quote, in particular, Senator Lee pointed to speeches in 2002 and 2009 where Hegel expressed sympathy for the Palestinians. Oh, why is that taboo? You know, there's a gal, may she rest in peace, a little courageous gal, an American girl, a young lady named Rachel Corrie, who went over there herself and saw the pitiful condition of these Palestinians, how they're treated, how their homes and their businesses have been bulldozed down. And unlike you, Senator Zionist Mike Lee, who I'm disgusted with as Utah, come on. She stood up for the Palestinians. She did more than declare sympathy for them. She tried to stand in the way of one lone little woman, in the way of a bulldozer, an Israeli Defense Force operated bulldozer. Rachel Corrie was bulldozed under. Have you forgotten that story, Mike Lee? Why can't you have some sympathy for human beings that are called Palestinians? Hey, Mike Lee, let me give you a little clue here. Many of them are Christians. Many of them, you see, believe in Jesus of Nazareth. Oh, we can't have any sympathy for those guys. We gotta support 100%, unequivocally, the godless atheist people in Israel call themselves Jews. Please, I'm sorry to be so politically incorrect to state such a thing, but that's the way it is. I'm not justifying Palestinian rocket attacks, but I'm also not agreeing that Israel should go across the border and bomb Syria like they just did also. Hey, it's time to call a spade a spade. Hey, the Palestinians got recognized at the United Nations after how many decades? 4 or 5? Finally, they have a voice. Sorry, I have some sympathy for Palestinians. Incredible. Finally, the final paragraph. Republican senators repeatedly questioned Hegel's commitment to Israel, a key U.S. ally. With allies like that, we don't need freaking enemies, senators. When I say that, I'm talking about allies that would come in and try and sink and straf and bomb and kill United States servicemen in the 1967 USS Liberty incident. Folks, no, until and unless Israel finally issues an apology and takes absolute responsibility for that, I say let him go to H-E double toothpicks with a flaming rear end. How about that, folks? Is that graphic enough to you? You know, we don't need allies that would dastardly attack our U.S. servicemen and try to blame it on an Arabian neighbor named Egypt. That's exactly what happened in 1967. The evidence is incredibly strong, folks, that the Pentagon during Donald Rumsfeld, the arch Zionist watch, that Dov Zakheim, a dual Israeli citizen and ordained Jewish rabbi, on his watch, $2.3 plus trillion went missing. Hey, whoa, you want to talk about committing political suicide? Hey, bring that up, Mr. Hagel. Say, well, we need to have an investigation. As Secretary of Defense, I want a complete, absolute investigation of Dov Zakheim and the Israeli links to September 11th. But you want to talk about raising some eyebrows? Where's anybody with backbone? And you see, if Barack Hussein Obama was the real deal, he'd be doing the same thing. But he's not, folks, because Islam is Edomite, just like Zionism is Edomite. If you doubt that, please go to my blog, HRA.com. Look at the post where I expose the origins of Islam. The truth about the so-called Kaaba, the cube, the black cube of the most holy place in all of Islam, the place called Mecca in Saudi Arabia. Learn the history, folks. The Edomites that call themselves today Jews, their ancestors did rituals on that exact same spot, and that's the origins of the Jewish phylactery, this black cube, same dimensional square. And folks, when you turn the black Kaaba on its axis, you see the hexagram, the black magic portal, if you will, of demonic influence and spell casting and black magic. And I emphasize black magic. But folks, Christians in this country are perishing because they just are flat out ignorant. They flat out don't know who the enemy is. You ever wonder why Barack Hussein Obama, a Muslim with a Muslim name, is surrounded by communist Jews, such as Raoul Emanuel and the Crown family of Chicago? Folks, Al-Qaeda is Zionism. These infiltrators paid by the Zionist CIA, the satanic CIA, to go in to disrupt all these Middle Eastern countries, from Libya to Syria to Egypt, to destabilize the whole Middle East. Who do you think funds them? Same cabal ruled by the cube, the Kabbalah, the phylactery, so-called. Look at a Jewish synagogue when you got the black strapped cube on the arm and the black strapped cube on the head, on the top of the forehead. Where do you think that's all about? Where do you think the prayers originate? Do you think it comes from Jesus of Nazareth? If you do, go ahead. I got a bridge to sell you in Timbuktu. See, the Jews hate Jesus Christ. They mock him. They spit on anything to do with him. They call him filthy, rotten names. Folks, that's the reality. Either we're a Christian nation or we're satanic. Either this is the great Satan or we're Christian. Either one. I mean, it can't be both ways. You can't sit on the fence on this because, you see, Christ himself said, you're either for me or you're against me. If you're not in my corner, you're part of the problem. You're not part of the solution. Wake up, America. What's wrong with being Christian? What's wrong with loving freedom? What's wrong with loving love and seeking peace and seeking prosperity? What's wrong with those values, you see? The answer is absolutely nothing is wrong with them. But when you stand up for those values, you say you are labeled anti-Semitic. You're labeled, when you point a finger of understanding at Satanists that are determined to bring your ethics down. When you look at the pornography industry, and you see it as ruled by the same Jews, when you see the smut films, the child sex slave trafficking, you see, and you understand that it's all the same people, and you wonder why we have no morality, when you wonder who's behind the removal of Christian prayers in our schools, when you see who's behind the mass killings of unborn children and abortions. Folks, when you when you pull up the rock and the same slimy little creatures crawl out, what can you say but the truth? But people are afraid. The Chuck Hagels of the world are afraid of this powerful group of monotheistic creatures. Because they own the gold, they have the power, they have the influence. It's the worldly power, folks. It's not the spiritual domain of interdimensionality that they don't control any of that. They hate that. They fear that. See, either you're for Christ or you're against Him. Either you're for Christian principles of honor, of integrity, and peace, or you're not. You're against them. You're wanting war. You're wanting terror. You're wanting fear. You see, that's what rules in the so-called Jewish mindset. And Mormonism is just another extension of Zionism, folks. Without a doubt, that's the truth. Scientology, nothing but CIA, satanic creation of L. Ron Hubbard. L. Ron Hubbard, an absolute disciple and friend by his own admission of Aleister Crowley. Hello? Jack Parsons. He roommates with an avowed Satanist and conjurer of demonic entities, Jack Parsons. And you don't get it, folks? No, you're just not willing to look. Your ears are plugged up. My God. Oh, boy. I hear you, folks. I do. Well, that was very weird, folks. Just a buzz in my earphones and a click, and I'm off the air. I don't know. Hey, Abby, that wasn't on your end, was it? She can't answer me. She probably typed in. I don't know what happened. I just was turning the newspaper page and click. It was gone. Well, we're back. Knock on wood. We'll stay there. Hey, this Associated Press story is even more bizarre, folks. An Associated Press story. Associated Press story now by Robert Burns and Donna Casada. They tell a little different story than what Mike Lee in the Salt Lake Tribune says. No, Hagel will probably get enough Democratic votes. Though he's a Republican, they'll still back the Muslim mulatto, the magnificent Muslim mulatto, Barack Obama. Quote, Republican senators hammered former GOP Senator Chuck Hagel at his confirmation hearing Thursday on issues ranging from Israel and Iran to his support for a group that advocates the elimination of nuclear weapons. But with most Democrats in his corner, an unflustered Hagel seems headed for approval as Defense Secretary. Hagel, a former two-term Republican senator from Nebraska, the heartland of America, right, described his views as mainstream and closely aligned with those of President Barack Obama, the Democrat who nominated him. Let me just stop right there. You got to ask yourself, why would a radically left-wing, communist, socialist president nominate a Republican senator from the heartland of America, the great state of Nebraska, the Cornhusker state? Why would, does this fit, folks? Well, it fits only on one possible scenario in my mind. That Omaha, Nebraska is the epicenter of something called Boys Town and the incredible hotbed of Satanism that is there, as documented in the book Folks, that story, people have died, have been murdered to keep that story quiet. A documentary film called The Conspiracy of Silence was all set and ready to go on national television at the last minute, whatever powerful pressures were brought to bear in the Jewish-controlled media once again, and it was stopped. The documentary, you can still see it on YouTube. It's called The Conspiracy of Silence, telling you the whole story. The point I'm bringing out with this, folks, is the fact that there are extremely powerful dark forces at work in Nebraska. Just as every other state, I submit. But you see, the story of Nebraska's Omaha-Franklin cover-up is at the very heart of the Republican GOP machine in that state. You see individuals involved in satanic ritual and mind control to the point where they traffic in young children, young boys and young girls. Now, I'm not saying Chuck Hagel is involved because I don't know. But, my goodness, this guy is flip-flopping and waffling on key issues like nothing I've ever seen. Doesn't he have any backbone? What is causing him to flip-flop like this? And this is what the article continues to go on. He says, he's closely aligned with his views of those of President Obama. Wait a minute, he's a left-wing communist. You're supposed to be this right-wing conservative GOP, Mr. Hagel. Quote, but several GOP members of the Armed Services Committee sought to portray him as radical and unsteady. Senator Deb Fisher, again, the Republican senator from Nebraska, the same state, in the hearing called his ideas, quote, extreme, and get this, far to the left of Obama. Folks, how can you get more further left than Obama? On this political spectrum, that far left, you start going to the right. I mean, extreme far right. I mean, that's how far obtuse this is. How much further can you get than world socialism and communist agenda? Take from the bourgeoisie and give it to the masses. Say, tax and spend, tax. If Hegel's truly far left of Obama, that's scary. What is she really saying? What is Deb Fischer really saying? Is Deb Fischer in the know about the Franklin cover-up in Obama and Obama's connections there in Nebraska, Omaha? Are those fair questions to even ask? I submit they are. Nothing is wrong to be asked. There's no such thing as a bad question, especially in politics. The only bad answer is, well, that's on a need-to-know basis, and you don't need to know. You're outside the security loop. And if you keep asking those type of questions, we'll never see that you get reelected. We'll make sure you never get reelected back to these hallowed halls. Yeah, please. Quote, Hegel said he believes America must engage, not retreat in the world. What does that mean? It means you must fire your missiles first and ask questions later? And insisted that his record is consistent on that point. He pointed to Iran and its nuclear ambitions as an example of an urgent national security threat. Really? Really? National security threat? Because, Iran's going to attack America? Please. An urgent national security threat should be addressed first by attempting to establish dialogue with Iranian rulers. Rulers? That's the connotation is, golly, they're crazy, iron-fisted dictators. No, they're not. There's dialogue with Iran, and they've been fully cooperative with weapons inspectors. Unlike another nation I could name by the name of Israel, which closed its doors to its Dimona nuclear facility since day one, and likely assassinated a president named John F. Kennedy. Folks, like I said, I'm just telling you the truth. I don't care if you like it or not. Just what it is. We'll take a break. We'll come back after these messages with the second segment. Please stay tuned.
Extract continues to receive positive testimonials from people who have experienced amazing results, like Reed.
I just wanted to send you a quick but a very big thank you for Heart and Body Extract. I've been on the formula for nearly a month now, and the improvement in the circulation of my legs has been simply amazing.
Reed was facing a tough choice.
I was facing surgery due to the severity of the 100% blocked arteries in both my legs. And my decision, waiting for surgery, to say no and try Heart and Body Extract instead, has been thankfully the right decision.
And the result?
I can now walk up steps without noticeable pain.
Order Heart and Body Extract at 866-295-5305, 866-295-5305, or hbextract.com. Heart and Body Extract for a long and healthy life.
Regardless of the dollar price involved, 1 ounce of gold would purchase a good quality man's suit at the conclusion of the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the presidency of Franklin Roosevelt, and today. You may not be in the market for a new suit, but you don't know what the future may bring. And gold is the one financial constant the world has ever known. It can always provide you with your basic needs. Whether you're looking for junk silver, old silver dollar rolls, gold bullion, or fractional tradable gold pieces, Kettle Moraine is your full-service representative with over 50 years of knowledge and personal experience. Visit FlyingEagleGold.com or call us at 623-327-1778 today for competitive prices on all your gold or silver needs. If you're looking for real financial insurance, call Kettle Moraine today at 623-327-1778. That's Kettle Moraine, 623-327-1778.
Now you can feel that squeaky clean sensation like none other with Vitamer toothpaste and mouthwash. Vitamer toothpaste and mouthwash is a unique natural formula not found in any other oral care products. With a gentle combination of zinc, folic acid, myrrh, and clove oil, Vitamer effectively whitens teeth, removes plaque, and freshens breath, and it does it naturally without any harmful chemicals. Visit us online at Vitamer.com. That's VITAMYR.com. Or call us today to place your order at 1-888-558-8482. That's 1-888-558-8482. Keep your teeth and gums healthy with Vitamer toothpaste and mouthwash. Vitamer, nature's answer to healthy teeth and gums. And remember, it's all completely natural. Available at participating health food stores nationwide.
Hello, I have something I'd like to share with you. LisaKCandles.com is an all-natural soybean candle alternative. Before I found Lisa K Candles, I had lingering soot and allergens in my home. Not today. My Lisa K Candles are clearly a difference to see and breathe. And you know, that's a good peace of mind. LisaKCandles.com is an all-natural soybean candle, handmade from their popular line of fragrances. And guys, these candles make a perfect gift. Order an all-natural soy candle from LisaKCandles.com. I'm glad I did, and I know you will be too. Visit LisaKCandles.com. That's Lisa, the letter K, Candles.com. Or call 731-441-3293. That's 731-441-3293.
Hello, brothers and sisters. We have witnessed the deaths of millions in fake wars. We have seen the erosion of rights and suppression of dissent and protest, and we have failed to stop any of it. This does not mean we are beaten. On the contrary, we are strong, and we can take the fight to our enemy because we are offensive, and we cannot be stopped. Join us as we wage war against our oppressors and the tyrants by insulting them as often as we want. Yes, no matter what else you can or cannot do, you can always call your rulers odious swats. Go on, give it a shot, you'll feel better, and you'll have added to the growing ranks of the offensive. The owners of the earth, the fascist, selfish, greedy, lying, murdering scum, the super rich and their miserable lives of privilege and dominance, the thieving, murdering, decadent deep states. You cannot stop us being offensive. Do you see? You cannot stop us being offensive. Do you see? We can strike at any time. Our arsenal of words will assault you with ever more insults. Bankers and warmongers, be warned. We are offensive. We do not take it back. We do not think we went too far.
welcome back to the story behind the story. Yeah, I hear you. I know, folks. Chuck Hagel is a scum. I mean, yeah, come on. Anybody that's tied into this cabal at the top to handle the defense secretary position. Yeah, I know about his questionable ethics as far as even getting. There's a lot of evidence that he manipulated the vote himself to even be elected as a senator. I'm just again saying I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's not up to his neck in the satanic ritual cabal that is so prevalent there in Omaha, Nebraska. It's a cesspool, folks. We interviewed State Senator John DeCamp here, put him on 3 hours of videotape testimony here with the late Ted Gunderson, and this was done primarily for the benefit of a gentleman by the name of Dane Phillips. He sponsored this, basically paid the costs of this conference. His writer friend, that they were looking at doing a book called, they wanted to name it Battle Hymn. And they did the book. The book is finished, but you see, they didn't really want to, they didn't believe that this story behind the story of satanic ritual abuse was real. It was hard enough to convincing Dane's friend, his buddy, that the events of September 11th were fabricated and false flag. But the evidence, step by step, the evidence of the Pentagon, the lies, the absolute impossibilities that a plane the size of a commercial airliner could have ever made the damage hole in the Pentagon. All these things finally started to make Dane and his friend question. So they wanted to see this part of the story. And so we brought John DeCamp in. Ted Gunderson opened up his files. And John and Dane, John especially, John Skura, was stunned. The evidence is unbelievably factual. John said, good heavens, if I were to sit as an impartial member of a jury, I would have to convict. Of course you would. There is tons of credible evidence, but the mass Jewish-controlled media, Mr. Skura, as you found out, keeps the lid on this very well. John DeCamp laid it out. He says it's massive in Nebraska, the heartland of America. And my testimony was, say, it's just not in Omaha. Look at the police chief of Omaha, Nebraska. I won't name names. It's in the book, John DeCamp's book, The Franklin Cover-Up. The police chief is from Utah. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Not only that, he's from the town where I live, Ogden, Utah. Now, because of the implications in John DeCamp's book, this good Mormon gentleman from Utah brought a defamation of character lawsuit against John DeCamp. It was heard right here in Ogden, Utah. John DeCamp flew out and defended himself. And acquitted himself. John shared with us the transcripts of this. The judge says, well, it's not against the law to print truth. So I'm sorry if it defamed you and your family's name, but it's accurate information. See, the thing about libel, folks, and slander is it's got to be malicious with the intent to hurt somebody, and then secondly, it's got to be basically false. Or at least stretching the truth. But no, John DeCamp proved without a doubt it was absolutely factual. Now, all of this is not in the national media. All of this is not even in the Utah media. It's all quiet. Hush, hush, hush. Folks, I'm here to tell you that Mormonism is up to its eyebrows in this whole thing, too. It's child ritual, satanic ritual abuse. It's called SRA, by short. The preponderance of evidence that I presented with victims, folks, with the files of John DeCamp, the testimony of Ted Gunderson, convinced John Skura and Dane Phillips without a shadow of a doubt. And the book is simply Battle Hymn. Dane launched a new website, battlehymn.com. Check it out. Check it out, folks. So, don't believe the media, folks. That's all I can tell you. Here's this, again, I want to finish up this Associated Press story because it just shows what's really driving Washington District of Criminals. Quote, I think we're always on higher ground in every way. International law, domestic law, people of the world, people of the region. To be with us on this, Hagel says, quote, if we have gone through every possibility to resolve this in a responsible, peaceful way, rather than going to war. Hey, Hagel, why don't you tell him also the truth? You know, bombing Iran is going to precipitate World War III. Take it to the bank. You want to see America invaded or bombed? Drop a couple bombs on Iran and see how Russia and China respond. Quote, he pushed back on the notion, first raised by one of his harshest Republican critics, Senator James Inhofe of Oklahoma, good old Okie, that he favors a policy of appeasement. Appeasement. Yeah. Quote, I think engagement is clearly in our interest, Hagel told Senator Saxby Chambliss, Republican from Georgia, who denounced the idea of negotiating with a, quote, terrorist state. What? Iran, a terrorist state? Oh, my gosh. As if Israel is not? Quote, that's not negotiation, Hagel said. Engagement is not appeasement. Engagement is not surrender. After the day-long hearing, committee chairman Carl Levin, get the name, Jewish chairman Carl Levin, Democrat, Michigan, so the panel could vote as early as next Thursday if Hagel quickly provides additional material requested by some members. The nominees' fiercest exchange came from, you get it, arch-Zionist Senator John McCain, Senator John of the bloodline of Cain, Republican Arizona, a fellow Vietnam veteran, one-time close friend, and a vote that could carry considerable sway. Politics and Hagel's evolving opposition to the Iraq War caused a split between the two men that was on full display. McCain suggested that Hagel and his critics were not quibbling over small matters. McCain said, quote, they are not reasonable people disagreeing. They are fundamental disagreements. Our concerns pertain to the quality of your professional judgment and your worldview on critical areas of our national security, McCain said. McCain pressed Hagel on whether he was right or wrong about his opposition to President George W. Bush's decision to send an extra 30,000 troops to Iraq in 2007 at a point when the war seemed in danger of being lost. Ladies and gentlemen, did you ever hear in the press in 2007 that we had a chance of losing that war? What? Now it's, well, in 2007, if you didn't send 30,000 more research troops, we would have lost that war. That's what McCain's saying. Wait a flickin' minute. Is this the same war that President George Bush on the aircraft carrier announced to cameras on MSNBC and CBS, ABC, Jew-run controlled media? We have won the war. We have taken Baghdad. Now it's just a matter of occupation. The war seemed in danger of being lost? Holy cow. In 2007. Hagel, who voted to authorize military force first in Iraq, later opposed the conflict. And folks write, well, he should have from the very beginning. I mean, all you have to do is read Susan Lindauer's book to understand that Iraq was in no way, shape, or form anyway a party to the events of September 11th. But the only reason Iraq was attacked was because Israel wanted it done. Israel, folks, wanted it. You tell me if it's justified. Senator McCain of Cain lineage, you tell me if it's justified to bomb the living crud out of 1.5 million, send 1.5 million Iraqi citizens to their graves. Tell me if that's justified. Tell me if they were in any way responsible for 3,000 dead Americans on September 11th. No, the evidence points to Israel being involved. Israel, the country, you know, that $2.3 trillion of the Pentagon that went missing with an Israeli citizen at the head of the comptroller desk. Oh, talk about whacked out. Talk about backwards. Who's going to speak up for sympathy for the Iraqi people, innocent people that were murdered with this war? Flat out murdered. Folks, I don't care what their ideology is. They have every right to defend their homeland from an invading foreign troop that's set to kill their leader. I mean, if Canada, or heaven forbid Mexico or Chile, came to depose Barack Obama and invaded America, do you think Americans would not stand and fight? I don't care if you think President Obama is a squirrel and a crook, as he is, but you still fight to protect your homeland. See how twisted the propaganda is? The mass media brainwashing of America? Nobody's talking about the 1 million+ Iraqi casualties of that war of aggression only because Israel wanted it done. There was not a shred of evidence, absolutely no evidence of any weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. That's all a big flat hoax, like Sandy hoax. Folks, lies by the media. Stories of Iraqis going in and massacring little babies in the incubators. How quick we forget, folks. Conda Sleazy Rice getting on Face the Nation. I don't want the next terrorist attack to be in the form of a nuclear cloud, a mushroom cloud. Fear, anxiety, bullpucky, lies, Edomite lies, Mossad, CIA, lies, ladies and gentlemen, lies, the domain of Lucifer. Jesus Christ is the truth. You see the problem? Jesus Christ is not going to be behind any of this skullduggery and lies and deception. It's totally satanic, totally Luciferian. And that, you see, is the problem. Israel is run by Luciferian atheists. So McCain pressed Hagel whether he was right or wrong about his opposition to President George Bush's decision to send, quote, an extra 30,000 troops to Iraq in 2007 at a point when the war seemed in danger of being lost. Hagel, who voted to authorize military force in Iraq, later opposed the conflict, comparing it to Vietnam and arguing that it shifted the focus from Afghanistan. Were you right? Were you correct in your assessment? McCain asked. Quote, I would defer to the judgment of history to sort that one out, Hagel said, as the two men talked over each other. Unable to elicit a simple response, McCain said the record should show that Hagel refused to answer. And he made it clear that he would have the final word with his vote, which he said would be influenced by Hegel's refusal to answer yes or no. McCain then said, quote, I think history has already made a judgment about the surge, sir, and you're on the wrong side of it, he said. History? Oh, McCain, who's writing the history books? The American people, I am one of them, had never been told that the war could have been lost if the surge didn't happen. This is now just coming out now. You lying sack of garbage. And people, if you're not incensed about this, you're not awake. You're brain dead. Now get this, quote, responding to criticism from outside GOP-leaning groups, Hagel repeated his regrets about using the term Jewish lobby to refer to pro-Israel groups. Hello? What is AIPAC if it's not a Jewish lobby? What are you supposed to call it? What are you supposed to name it? But he's up here mealy-mouthing, apologizing for using the term Jewish lobby, saying they wield undue influence over senators and decision-makers in Capitol Hill. What do you call them? Should you call them what they really are? Jewish bribery fixers? No, their licensed lobbyist group, ladies and gentlemen, is called the AIPAC, the American Israeli Political Activity Commission. It's an AIPAC. It's a Jewish lobby. It ought to be illegal. It ought to be. It ought to be just called what it is. It's a bribery and fixing, blackmailing organization. Hey, that's better. Wow. Hagel said he should have used another term and should not have said those groups have intimidated members of the Senate into favoring actions contrary to U.S. interests. Quote, I'm sorry I said it and I regret it, Hagel said. Well, sir, I regret that you now say you regret saying it. What's wrong with standing up and saying, hey, it is what it is. This group is anti-American interest. Good heavens, they embezzle $2.3 trillion of U.S. ordinances in the Pentagon, and they bomb the Pentagon, they destroy the Pentagon, and they demolish the Twin Towers to cover their tracks. Folks, that's motive. That's what is called motive in criminal cases. And there's 2.3 trillion of them. Pretty doggone good motive. Where's integrity? Where is honesty? This mealy-mouthed Hagel will say anything he can possibly say to suck hind tit to get in there in the office. Is he that desperate for a job? I submit it's deeper than that, folks. I submit he's up to his neck in the satanic cabal. What it is, folks, I got to tell you, it just flat out makes me cringe. The second hour, I'm going to go into, it's a recording I've done, folks. It's talking about Alexander Solzhenitsyn's incredible book, The Gulag Archipelago. You got to listen to I'm going to tell you about the forward of the book, and again, you got to read the book to really know what's going on right now. The likes of Hegel and others. Hey, talk at you later. Stay tuned.
I'd like to share with you, LisaKCandles.com is an all-natural soybean candle alternative. Before I found Lisa K Candles, I had lingering soot and allergens in my home. Not today. My Lisa K Candles are clearly a difference to see and breathe. And you know, that's a good peace of mind. LisaKCandles.com is an all-natural soybean candle, handmade from their popular line of fragrances. And guys, these candles make a perfect gift. Order an all-natural soy candle from LisaKCandles.com. I'm glad I did, and I know you will be too. Visit LisaKCandles.com. That's Lisa, the letter K, Candles.com. Or call 731-441-3293. That's 731-441-3293.
Regardless of the dollar price involved, 1 ounce of gold would purchase a good quality man's suit at the conclusion of the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the presidency of Franklin Roosevelt, and today. You may not be in the market for a new suit, but you don't know what the future may bring. And gold is the one financial constant the world has ever known. It can always provide you with your basic needs. Whether you're looking for junk silver, old silver dollar rolls, gold bullion, or fractional tradable gold pieces, Kettle Moraine is your full-service representative with over 50 years of knowledge and personal experience. Visit FlyingEagleGold.com or call us at 623-327-1778 today for competitive prices on all your gold or silver needs. If you're looking for real financial insurance, call Kettle Moraine today at 623-327-1778. That's Kettle Moraine, 623-327-1778.
You can feel that squeaky clean sensation like none other with Vitamer toothpaste and mouthwash. Vitamer toothpaste and mouthwash is a unique natural formula not found in any other oral care products. With a gentle combination of zinc, folic acid, myrrh, and clove oil, Vitamer effectively whitens teeth, removes plaque, and freshens breath, and it does it naturally without any harmful chemicals. Visit us online at Vitamer.com. That's VITAMYR.com. Or call us today to place your order at 1-888-558-8482. That's 1-888-558-8482. Keep your teeth and gums healthy with Vitamer toothpaste and mouthwash. Vitamer, nature's answer to healthy teeth and gums. And remember, it's all completely natural. Available at participating health food stores nationwide.
we're back. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second hour of today's story behind the story. Oh, golly, I wanted to spend this next hour going over verbatim this book that I'm holding right here in my hand. The title of it is simply The Gulag Archipelago, and I want to do this, folks, because it's so extremely relevant in today's America. Many people will hear this and say, oh, that's boring, it doesn't affect me, it's not relevant to America, but yes, folks, it most certainly is relevant. Absolutely. It tells a story, what happened in Russia, how it devolved into the Soviet Socialist Republic, right? The complete and total communist state. Communism, folks, is exclusively a Jewish creation. Here you have the story of Mother Russia is a story of infiltration, a story of a minority, really quite a small minority, of godless, satanic miscreants that gained power through deals made in backroom doors involving money transfers, involving murders. It's a story of intrigue and political assassination, really. Culminating in the assassination, the murder, the outright killing fields of millions of people, millions of Christians, folks, beginning with and starting with, of course, the Bolshevik slaughter of the Tsar and his family. See, the ignorance of American people on this topic is epic. Because, you see, we have the exact same situation happening in America today. We have a population, roughly 2%. 2% of the population, a subset of people, a minority of people that wield absolutely unparalleled power in the halls of Congress. They have a lobby that's simply called AIPAC. This lobby that's tied again to this state of Israel is as corrupt as anything you've ever seen. And amazingly, the controlled news media, which is again controlled by this tribe, absolutely, make no doubt about it, it is controlled media. We'll never let you know about it. Thus we had to talk about it on these alternative radio shows with very minimal coverage, really, as far as the population is concerned. People listening to this show are most definitely a small portion, but it's the people that really are wide awake and want to share the truth, want to uphold and embrace the complete and total truth. This truth is written very well in the pages of this book, The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. This is an incredible book. I've just received my copy. It's a British copy recently. I've been reading it. It's very engrossing. It's hard to put down. It's hard not to become emotionally involved in the story. Let me share with you verbatim the forward. Maybe we'll even start in the second hour of the other shows as time allows. We'll just go and read the top parts of this book verbatim. And folks, I really strongly advise you to get your own copy of this book, The Gulag Archipelago. You can get it from any outlet, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Absolutely, you'll understand why it received the Nobel Prize. This is absolutely an incredible story. those of you that don't know Alexander Solzhenitsyn's story, he's no longer with us. He passed away in 2008 at the age of 90 years old. He served as a highly decorated captain in the Soviet Army, served with distinction during World War II fighting against the Germans. But what happened is this: in the year 1945, as the war ended, he was convicted and sentenced to prison in the Gulag archipelago for a prison term of 8 years for verbally criticizing Stalin and the Soviet government. And he was doing this in private letters. He was not openly writing and speaking out against Stalin and the Soviet government. No, he wrote some concerns of criticism in private letters. Solzhenitsyn wrote other books besides this. He wrote a novel called In the First Circle and a small, really short story novella called One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. This One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich is a story of one Gulag worker's typical day. And this was actually brought out in the year 1962, and it garnered incredible national attention. 8 years later, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in the year 1970. Now, here's a story. Here is an incredible story, folks, of how this book, this writing, the documentation of the Gulag system, the, shall we call them, FEMA camps of Russia, the concentration camps of reprogramming of the Soviet Union. There's a foreword written here by a fellow author, a researcher in the Gulag world of darkness. Her name is Anne Applebaum. Let me just share with you what Ms. Applebaum writes in her foreword. Quote, although more than 3 decades have now passed since the winter of 1974, when unbound, hand-typed Samizdat manuscripts, those are just rough paper, basically, of Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago had first began circulating around what was then the Soviet Union. And this is the year 1974. The emotions the book stirred have left marks which remain to this very day. Get a handle on this, folks. Usually, readers were given only 24 hours to finish the lengthy manuscript before it had to be passed on to the next person. That meant spending an entire day and a whole night absorbed in Solzhenitsyn's prose. Not an experience anyone was likely to forget. Members of that first generation of readers remember who gave the book to them and who else knew about it, and whom they passed it on to next. They remember well what the book felt like. The blurry, mimeographed text, the dog-eared paper, the dim glow of the lamp switched on late at night, and with whom they would later discuss it with. In part, Russians responded so strongly because the Gulag Archipelago's author was at that time simultaneously very famous worldwide, yet strictly taboo in Russia. 12 years earlier, in 1962, Solzhenitsyn had attained an unusual distinction, becoming both the first authentic Gulag author to be published in the official press, as well as the last. In that year, the height of the post-Stalinist thaw, the Soviet General Secretary Nikita Khrushchev had personally permitted the publication of Solzhenitsyn's short story, One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. The book, based on Solzhenitsyn's own camp experience. Like Ivan Denisovich, he too had been a forced camp bricklayer. Described a single solitary day in the life of the typical Gulag prisoner. Reading it now, it can be hard for contemporary readers to understand why Solzhenitsyn's only published work had created such a furor in the Soviet literary world. But in the year 1962, Ivan Denisovich came as a revelation. Instead of speaking vaguely about repressions, as some other books did at the time, Ivan Denisovich was blunt and specific. The sufferings of its heroes were pointless. The work they did was boring and exhausting, and they tried to avoid it. They spoke using camp slang and were rude to one another. The party did not triumph at the end of the story, and communism did not win out in the end. This honesty, unusual in an era of morality tales and social realism, won Solzhenitsyn admirers, particularly among camp survivors, who wrote him long letters of praise. Each new printing of the novel sold out instantly, and scarce copies were eagerly shared among groups of friends. But Solzhenitsyn's honesty also quickly won him detractors. Within a month of publication, the novel had already been denounced at a meeting of the Soviet Writers' Union. Critics wrote that it was too bleak, too, quote, amoral. Within a few more months, Solzhenitsyn himself was under personal attack, falsely accused of having to surrender to the Germans during the war, and of having been convicted on criminal charges. He fought back as best he could, but to no avail. Thanks to the furor caused by this first published novel, none of his work would ever again be officially published in the Soviet Union. Let me just again, this is a modus operandi of these lying Edomite, Satanists, Khazars, folks. When somebody comes out with truth, when somebody comes out with a piece of literature, whether it's a poem or a short story in this case, that absolutely tells the truth and dissolves propaganda to the contrary, you see what happens? They got to attack and blackball the messenger. And they'll do so with the most outrageous falsehoods and lies. For they are of their father, the devil, according to Christ. They live and love the lie, the big lie that they are the downtrodden, the persecuted children of God. That's absolutely the biggest hoax and lie of the last 200 years, folks. So I got to tell you, having experienced this myself, for daring to even talk about these Khazar imposters. I have been attacked, and my personal credentials, which are really quite sterling outside of the United States, have been attacked by these same bloodline Khazar liars. Just the way it is. So I follow Christ's advice personally. I pray for those who despitefully use me. I pray for my enemies, because, you see, it proves that I'm right over the target. It proves that, like Solzhenitsyn, I have a message that's important. And so this book, you see, is critically important. So Miss Applebaum continues. She writes, quote, "Yet his name and his novels remain in circulation thanks to the world of underground publishing in Russia, which at that time was growing rapidly. In fact, in the years between his first burst of official fame and the appearance of the Gulag Archipelago in samizdat form, mimeographed copy form, Solzhenitsyn became, if anything, more notorious and much more celebrated despite his official ban. The KGB began to follow him closely, and at one point stole his entire personal archive. His wife lost her job. Recently released archival documents show that his every move was closely analyzed at the highest levels of the Soviet security apparatus, aka Department of Homeland Security and NSA, okay? And sometimes even by the Politburo itself. At the same time, his occasional lectures were wildly popular. 600 people showed up for one of his first public readings in 1966. His books began to appear in foreign translations to great acclaim and were copied and recopied in secrecy. Now get this, folks. Then in 1970, Solzhenitsyn won the Nobel Prize for Literature. Fearing he would be barred from returning to Russia if he left the country, he decided against traveling to Stockholm, Sweden, to accept the award. But he issued a statement to be read out at the Nobel banquet, among other things noting, quote, "The remarkable fact that the day of the Nobel Prize presentation coincides with Human Rights Day," close quote, and calling on all Nobel Prize winners to remember that fact. He wrote, quote, "Let none at this festive table forget that political prisoners are on a hunger strike this very day in defense of rights that have been curtailed or trampled underfoot," close quote. With this, the Swedish government was unnerved, and the Nobel Committee failed to read out that part of his statement. The Soviet authorities were furious and boycotted the ceremony entirely. Immediately, the Soviet Writers' Union denounced Solzhenitsyn as the, quote, "darling of reactionary circles in the West." And reviewers described him as, quote, as a run-of-the-mill writer with an exaggerated idea of his own importance, and whose literary gifts were, quote, inferior to many of his Soviet contemporaries. Writers the West chooses to ignore because it finds the impact of truth in their writing unbearable. You see the Hegelian dialectic at work here, folks. They will take the truth and absolutely spin it 180 degrees. The lie is directly opposite of the truth that Solzhenitsyn was writing, you see. quote, still millions of Russians learned of the prize through Western radio, that's the Nobel Prize, through Western radio, as well as through the underground press, which widely circulated the statement that the Swedes had feared to read, and celebrated the award to their countrymen. Thus, when news that Solzhenitsyn had written a history of the Soviet Gulag began to leak out too, there was an enormous reading public and a listening public. For excerpts were immediately read out on Radio Liberty, already waiting to receive it. So here's another little clue, folks. Had an underground radio station, Radio Liberty, that dared to broadcast what the official news were censoring. Doesn't that sound just amazingly like America today in so many ways? You see, the one thing that's keeping us from becoming the Russia of the 1920s and into the 1960s and 70s, the one thing is, we have guns, folks. We have, yes, praise the Lord, semi-automatic guns with large capacity magazines. People say, what does a law-abiding citizen need with an automatic, semi-automatic assault-type weapon? Because it's more powerful to stand with the militia against government troops that have these fully automatic M16s, Bushmasters. Don't go into a gunfight arm only with a knife, folks. You bet we need automatic weaponry if we need to stand up against tyranny. It's just amazing. So here, the forward continues. Yet the impression which the Gulag Archipelago made on its first Russian readers was not solely due to the author's notoriety, or to his Nobel Prize, or to the denunciations of him in the Soviet press. Most importantly, the book's appearance also marked the first time that anyone inside Russia had ever tried to write a complete history of the Soviet secret concentration camps, using what information was available, mostly the, quote, reports, memoirs, and letters by 227 witnesses, of whom Solzhenitsyn cites in his introduction. Many Russians knew only fragments of the story from the lips of the cousin who had been there, or the neighbor's nephew who worked in the secret police. No one, however, had attempted to put it all together to tell what is in effect the alternative history of the Soviet Union. You see, there is the official scribe and Pharisee version, the sanitized version, and then there's the alternative truth, the history of truth. And the result was unique. Solzhenitsyn himself called the book The Gulag Archipelago an experiment in literary investigation, and that remains the best description of a work which is otherwise impossible to categorize. The book is not quite a straight history, obviously. Solzhenitsyn did not have access to archives or historical records, and large sections are autobiographical. But Solzhenitsyn describes in great detail his own arrest and interrogation, his very first prison cell, and courageously his flirtation with camp police, who asked him to serve as an informer. Other parts of the book rely heavily on the words and experiences of others. including some of the Solzhenitsyn's camp friends, as well as many people he did not know, but who wrote to him after the publication of Ivan Denisovich. Still other sections are based on Solzhenitsyn's research into what sources were available. Legal tomes, official histories, and the Soviet press. Oh, folks, we're going to take a break. We'll come back and finish up this incredible foreword and the first part here of The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Please stay tuned. Be right back.
Hello, I have something I'd like to share with you. LisaKCandles.com is an all-natural soybean candle alternative. Before I found Lisa K Candles, I had lingering soot and allergens in my home. Not today. My Lisa K Candles are clearly a difference to see and breathe. And you know, that's a good peace of mind. LisaKCandles.com is an all-natural soybean candle, handmade from their popular line of fragrances. And guys, these candles make a perfect gift. Order an all-natural soy candle from LisaKCandles.com. I'm glad I did, and I know you will be too. Visit LisaKCandles.com. That's Lisa, the letter K, Candles.com. Or call 731-441-3293. That's 731-441-3293.
Regardless of the dollar price involved, 1 ounce of gold would purchase a good quality man's suit at the conclusion of the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the presidency of Franklin Roosevelt, and today. You may not be in the market for a new suit, but you don't know what the future may bring. And gold is the one financial constant the world has ever known. It can always provide you with your basic needs. Whether you're looking for junk silver, old silver dollar rolls, gold bullion, or fractional tradable gold pieces, Kettle Moraine is your full-service representative with over 50 years of knowledge and personal experience. Visit FlyingEagleGold.com or call us at 623-327-1778 today for competitive prices on all your gold or silver needs. If you're looking for real financial insurance, call Kettle Moraine today at 623-327-1778. That's Kettle Moraine, 623-327-1778.
Now you can feel that squeaky clean sensation like none other with Vitamer toothpaste and mouthwash. Vitamer toothpaste and mouthwash is a unique natural formula not found in any other oral care products. With a gentle combination of zinc, folic acid, myrrh, and clove oil, Vitamer effectively whitens teeth, removes plaque, and freshens breath, and it does it naturally without any harmful chemicals. Visit us online at Vitamer.com. That's VITAMYR.com. Or call us today to place your order at 1-888-558-8482. That's 1-888-558-8482. Keep your teeth and gums healthy with Vitamer toothpaste and mouthwash. Vitamer, nature's answer to healthy teeth and gums. And remember, it's all completely natural. Available at participating health food stores nationwide.
And we're back. Welcome back to the final segment of today's Story Behind the Story. Once again, we're discussing in this final half hour the content of this incredible book, a must-read book, in my opinion, The Gulag Archipelago. And my goodness, the documentation here is just absolutely stunning. The foreword to the book is written by another Gulag researcher by the name of Anne Applebaum. She'd also written about this as well. So she's giving the foreword in a very interesting style. Continuing on, Ann Applebaum writes, quote, but all of the material was then filtered through Solzhenitsyn's unique sensibility and retold in a style which was simultaneously angry, prophetic, ironic, but always opinionated. Thus, the Gulag Archipelago is a history, but it also an interpretation of history, and one which many at first found shocking. Up until the publication of Gulag, many in Russia and elsewhere were content to blame Stalin for Soviet terror, concentration camps, and mass arrests. Solzhenitsyn argued, and with real evidence, that Lenin, not Stalin, was responsible for creating the Gulag system, and that the first Soviet concentration camps for political prisoners were built in the 1920s, not the 1930s. He also showed that the famous, quote, Great Purge of the 1930s, during which many leaders of the Bolshevik Revolution were put on public trial and then executed, was no aberration. In reality, it was only one of the many, quote, waves which strained the murky, stinking pipes of our prison sewers to bursting, end quote. And not even the largest at that. Far more people were killed during the era of mass collectivization, and the Gulag population actually reached its zenith a full decade later, at the end of the 1940s and in the early 1950s. And that was, again, the conclusion of World War II. What were they doing? Creating more and more political prisoners after World War II is finished, after Adolf Hitler is vanquished and the Soviet bloc takes most of Eastern Europe. Why the increase? Well, this is all explained in the book. It has more to do with religion and striving for honesty, truth, and freedom than anything else, folks. And in an age in America where those who dare to tell the truth, you see, they dare to stand up and tell the truth about Israel, are blackballed. When you see, as I said in the first hour, the incredible blackballing of Senator Hagel, and the question is not on his ability, folks. It's all about how anti-Semitic he is, how we dare to talk about the, quote, Jewish lobby. We talked about that in the first hour. And so here we see it again mirrored in this Soviet Union dictatorship of full Edomite Jewish communism. Got to get a handle on this, folks. Quote, most importantly, Solzhenitsyn aimed to show that, contrary to what many believed, the Gulag was not merely an incidental phenomenon, something which the Soviet Union would eventually eliminate or outgrow. Rather, the prison system had been an essential part of the Soviet economic and political system from the very beginning. You get that, folks? Economic and political system. Collectivism. Communism. See, as America goes closer and closer to that precipice of full socialism, as America is ground down, as free speech and the rights to express yourself are curtailed in the exact same manner through political correctness, you see, by the brainwashing of America, the more that we're going to be needing a gulag system here in America. It's flat out happening, folks. We can repeat that what Ms. Applebaum wrote. The prison system had become an essential part of the Soviet economic and political system from the very beginning. When you understand again that we're talking about Jews, folks, that are controlling it. These godless, atheistic, anti-Christian Jews. That's their modus operandi. It's the same in the Soviet Union. It's the same today as we speak, in Red China and North Korea and other places. Quote, we never did have empty prisons, Solzhenitsyn wrote. Merely prisons which were full or prisons which were very, very overcrowded. In fact, the Gulag Archipelago was intended to serve as a condemnation, not just of the Soviet camp system, but of the Soviet Union's political system itself. It succeeded, so much so that Soviet authorities decided they could no longer tolerate Solzhenitsyn's presence at all. As a direct result of its publication, not just in Russia, but in multiple foreign countries, Solzhenitsyn was expelled from the country. He was, folks, excommunicated from his native land. Mormonism, folks, is Judaism, absolutely Zionism. There is no room for questioning of the Mormon leaders. Whispering about dissent in the Mormon ranks gets you on a watch list. If you keep going, they'll just flat out expel you from the ranks. They will excommunicate you. He would not return to his homeland until after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. With this expulsion, Solzhenitsyn became a true international celebrity, and the influence of the Gulag Archipelago began to spread rapidly outside of Russia. The first German translation was received rapturously and in exactly the spirit its author had intended. One left-wing German newspaper wrote that the Gulag Archipelago constituted a, quote, burning question mark over 50 years of Soviet power, over the whole Soviet experiment from 1918 on. The French and English translations appeared somewhat later, thanks to some misunderstandings over ownership of publication rights, but were equally influential. In the United States, where Solzhenitsyn ultimately chose to reside after his expulsion, the paperback edition of the Gulag Archipelago's first volume sold more than 2 million copies. In France, it is no exaggeration to say that the book effectively ended the long-standing French intellectual flirtation with Soviet communism. Hear, hear. So threatening was the book to the French status quo that Jean-Paul Sartre himself described Solzhenitsyn as, quote, a dangerous element. This is all the more reason why America needs to really embrace this and read it. Not many Americans have. Quote, the West had heard of the Soviet camp system before, of course. Critical witnesses had begun reporting on the growth of the Gulag as early as the 1920s. But what Solzhenitsyn produced was simply more thorough more monumental and more detailed than anything that had been produced previously. It simply could not be ignored or dismissed as a single man's experience. No one who dealt with the Soviet Union diplomatically or intellectually could ignore it. Among other things, its horrific portrait of Soviet terror certainly contributed to the development, first under President Jimmy Carter and then under President Ronald Reagan, of an American foreign policy which recognized human rights as a legitimate element of international debate. See what one man can do, one man that writes honestly and writes well, can even influence presidential foreign policy, you see. Since then, the stature of the Gulag Archipelago, now published in hundreds of editions and in dozens of languages, has continued to grow. True enough, as open debate about the book and its subject has become possible in recent years, some legitimate criticisms of the work have been aired. Some camp survivors felt their memoirs entrusted to Solzhenitsyn were used in ways they didn't like, or to illustrate points they hadn't been making themselves. Others objected to his almost fanatical insistence that any form of cooperation with the Gulag authorities amounted to collaboration. For instance, the writer Lev Razgon, another Gulag memorist, argued that for himself, as for many others, choosing to take an indoor accounting job was simply a matter of survival, not a moral weakness. There was never a moral, Razgon wrote, to choose life. It is also true that in the 15 years that have passed since the Russian archives have opened, some errors have been found in Solzhenitsyn's work. His statistics are often wrong, and he sometimes garbles names and dates. Some of the stories he tells are, of course, impossible to verify, and some of the information he presents is partial or incomplete. Nevertheless, what is the most extraordinary thing about rereading the Gulag Archipelago more than 15 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union is just how much it does get right. Although he did not have access to archival documents or governmental records, Solzhenitsyn's general outline of the history of the Gulag, from its origins in the Solovetsky Islands in the 1920s, through its expansions at the time of collectivization in the early 1930s, through the death of Stalin and the subsequent camp rebellions, has all been proven correct. His description of the moral issues faced by the prisoners has never been disputed. His sociology of camp life, though presented in literary form, is unquestionably accurate. Among other things, the general reliability of the history presented in the Gulag Archipelago proves that prisoners' gossip, so often dismissed by scholars as inaccurate, was often extremely right. Indeed, part of the book's impact at the time of publication derived from the fact that both former victims and former perpetrators recognized Solzhenitsyn's descriptions and chronology as accurate, reflecting their own experiences. This truthfulness continues to give the book a freshness and an importance which will never be challenged. For a contemporary reader, The book brilliantly evokes a mentality which no longer exists and which is increasingly difficult to describe or explain. Which is this, folks, the atmosphere of constant fear. Fear, the four-letter word, folks. You see, a collectivist government wants the people, wants the population to be ruled by fear. Another synonym, of course, to fear is terror, folks. They want you to be afraid of terrorists, so they will stage attacks, false flag events. They will stage these things to make you fear, to make you have terror. This is what I get out of this book. The parallels to post-September 11th America, the rise of secret police like the Department of Homeland Security and the incredible top secret America's rise is just stunning. Again, Anne Applebaum writes, quote, the book brilliantly evokes a mentality which no longer exists and which is increasingly difficult to describe or explain. The atmosphere of constant fear, the constant temptation of betrayal, the ubiquity of secret police, the reversal of previously normal values, the generalized cruelty that permeated the culture of the Gulag, and of course of the Soviet Union itself. See, folks, the reversal of normal values. We're talking about values of Christian ideals, folks, to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, the golden rule, so called to really practice peace and love. See, these are the things that we're gone there. See, this is what comes with having godless anti-Christians at the helm. The cruelty is in their hearts is what led them to scream in orgasmic approval when Jesus Christ was nailed to that cross. I want you to go to my blog, HRL.com. I want you to see and watch that video I posted there about a popular Israeli TV show where this scantily bikini-clad top woman absolutely mocks and denigrates a monkey into my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Now, if something like that were to be portrayed on American television, folks, where you did that, mocked and made a monkey out of Jews in America, you'd have a public outcry and a burning of the station. It'd be shut down immediately. But it's okay to do it in Israel against Christians. It's just flat out stunning. The reversal of normal values, she writes, indeed, that is what's happening in America. If you're honest and telling the truth, those are mocked and laughed at and ridiculed. The reality is the way it is, folks. And she concludes in her foreword, Anne Applebaum writes, and yet no 21st century reader who picks up Solzhenitsyn's masterpiece for the first time should imagine that he or she is about to read a straightforward historical account. His book not only describes history, it is history itself. Thanks to Solzhenitsyn's obsessive attention to detail and his literary and polemical gifts, the Gulag Archipelago helped create the world that we live in today. A world in which Soviet communism is no longer held up as anybody's political ideal. Yeah, but see, it's happening in America. The same modus operandi, the same inroads that occurred there in the Soviet Union and are still occurring in Edomite-controlled Red China. Those things cannot be ignored in this Applebaum. And so, here's the preface written by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He writes, quote, in 1949, some friends and I came upon a noteworthy item in Nature, the magazine Nature, magazine of the Academy of Sciences. It reported that in little tiny type, that in the course of excavations on the Kalaima River, a subterranean ice lens had been discovered, which was actually a frozen stream. And in the stream were found frozen specimens of prehistoric fauna, some tens of thousands of years old. Whether fish or salamander, these were preserved in so fresh a state, the scientific correspondence reported that those present immediately broke open the eyes encasing the specimens and devoured them with relish right on the spot. The magazine, no doubt, astonished its small audience with the news of how successfully the flesh of fish could have been kept so fresh in a frozen state. But few indeed among its readers were able to decipher the genuine and heroic meaning of this incautious report. As for us, however, we understood instantly. We could picture the entire scene right down to the smallest details. How those present broke up the ice in frenzied haste. How flouting the higher claims of ichthyology and elbowing each other to be first, they tore off chunks of the prehistoric flesh and hauled them over to the bonfire to thaw them out and to bolt them down. We understood because we ourselves were the same kind of people as those present at that event. We, too, were from that powerful tribe of Zeks, unique on the face of the earth, the only people who could devour prehistoric salamander with relish. And the Kalaima was the greatest, most famous island, the pole of ferocity of that amazing country of Gulag, which, though scattered in an archipelago geographically, was, in the psychological sense, fused into a continent, an almost invisible, almost imperceptible country inhabited by the Zek people. And this archipelago crisscrossed and patterned that other country within, which it was located like a gigantic patchwork, cutting into its cities, hovering over its streets. If there were many who did not even guess at its presence, and many, many others who had only heard something vague. And only those who had been there know the whole truth. But as though stricken dumb on the islands of the archipelago, they kept their silence. On an unexpected turn of our history, a bit of the truth, an insignificant part of the whole, was allowed out in the open finally. But those same hands which once screwed tight our handcuffs now hold out their palms in reconciliation, saying, no, don't, please, don't dig up the past. Dwell on the past, and you'll lose an eye. But I reply, the proverb goes on to say, forget the past, and you lose both eyes. Folks, hope you're not losing any eyes. Let's just dot some eyes. Let's tell the truth. You have a great weekend, folks. We'll talk to you again on Monday. God bless.
Because we are offensive, and we cannot be stopped. Join us as we wage war against our oppressors